Chaminda Perera.
Respected venerable ones, uh, dear brothers and sisters, I wish there were more sisters here because I think we have to be a little mindful about the gender balance when we are dealing with the Asian media network, isn't it? And I'm also happy, I think this is the first panel with some women on it. Is that right? Is that the right impression? Okay. So, like a good journalist, I must first start with a disclaimer. I have been billed as a Buddhist communication scholar. I plead guilty to being Buddhist. I have done something about communications, be it in documentary films, a little bit of freelance journalism, and so on. But I would be extremely mindful before I describe myself as a scholar. I'm a layperson. I have had some experience working in social work, development fields, software, journalism, filmmaking, and I'm working now with the Deer Park Institute, a Buddhist education institute in Himachal Pradesh. Nonetheless, since this presentation is to be a countrywide description of coverage of Buddhism, therefore in India, I presume, and I think even time restrictions prevail, and we would be talking, I would be describing only a little bit about mainstream media. And that too in the languages which I know, because mainstream media in India is like humongous number of languages. And that would be English, Hindi, Marathi, and Gujarati. Let me start with a little story which most reporters and journalists may have been told during their training by their mentors. A cub reporter is sent out on his first assignment by his chief reporter to cover a flower show in a small town. And he goes very enthusiastic to cover the flower show, which some probably women's organization had put up. And he comes back, and the chief reporter says, "So, you got the story?" He said, "No, there was no flower show." He said, "What happened?" The whole building burned down and 7 people were killed. There was no story. Now, if I were a cub reporter, I would stop my presentation right now and say, "I'm going, there's no story. There's no Buddhism reportage in India, in the mainstream." I could do that. But then I would be guilty of what so many journalists we see are guilty of, whether they are cubs or not. Some of them are old lions, but they have some fixation, and that fixation blinds them to everything else. If you don't believe me, when you go back to your hotel, just turn on the television. There's a television in my room. I'm sure there's one in your room. And listen to any of the English channel news today. Anyone. But if you want real excitement, I would suggest Republic TV and Times Now. I would really suggest that if you want some fun at the end of the day. Well, uh, sometimes the absence of what should be said is more significant than its presence. So maybe the absence of Buddhist coverage in mainstream media says much more than its presence would have. It's not that there is no reportage at all. Buddha does get covered a little bit here and there. But let me just enumerate a few examples. The times when Buddhism, Buddha, or Buddhists get covered in mainstream media. If the Prime Minister makes a reference to the Buddha and Buddhism, if some celebrity film star or sports person declares she or he has found solace in Buddhism, if a new train or flight is inaugurated to the Buddhist pilgrim places, if there is a sex scandal concerning some Buddhist teacher, doesn't even matter if he's not Indian. If Buddhists indulge in non-Buddhist behavior such as violence, especially if they are neo-Buddhists. For those who are from abroad, neo-Buddhists are those who converted in the 50s with Dr. Ambedkar. A few lakh of them converted, and now there may be about 20 million in this country. They were the former untouchables and the lowest of the low in the caste system. When there is a 13-episode serial on TV on the Buddha's life, or when Shekhar Kapoor decides to make a film on the Buddha, when the Karmapa gives our intelligence services some sleepless nights, when the Dalai Lama makes a faux pas and starts talking about Kashmir or Mr. Nehru, or when we have to compete with China to retain the Buddhist legacy. Now we've been talking Buddhism, Buddhism, Buddhists. Who are these Buddhists we are talking about in India? Who are these individuals? What communities are there? Well, I could say, first of all, that the population of India is about 132 crores. Please figure out the zeros when you want to convert to millions. I can't do that. And about 8 million were enumerated in the 2011 census as Buddhists. Well, that's 2011. Unofficial figures now put it to 12 million. Perhaps 10 is somewhere closer to the truth. One whole section of Buddhists is in the Himalayan regions. Ladakh, Lahore, Spiti, northern portions of the sub-Himalayan regions. Then there are the Neo-Buddhists. We just said they constitute the bulk. They are perhaps 90, 95, 98% of Buddhists in India. Lastly, there are a sprinkling of people like me and some of the other people in this audience who, as the last speaker, as the last moderator said, might not even adopt Buddhism as a religion, go through Diksha and all that, but who have studied with Tibetan Buddhist teachers, some with the Master Thich Nhat Hanh, we have Shantam here, and quite a sizable number now of those who practice with the Soka Gakkai, which is the lay organization of the Nichiren Buddhists in Japan, which is now spread worldwide, over 120 countries. Now, these are the Buddhists who practice Buddhism or who think of themselves as Buddhists, and about whom we are investigating how these people and their lives or their religious practices or philosophies are covered in mainstream media. Now, rather than just telling you about it, I think I'd rather show rather than tell. And I've taken a few sample of headlines, and maybe we can read a sentence or two from the articles. And before I am accused of cherry picking or just selecting something to fit my theory of neglect, you can try it yourself. I didn't have much time to prepare for this. I think I got to know about the topic about 2 or 3 days back. Just Google anything you want, Buddhism in India, media coverage of Buddhists in India, etc., and see whether you get the same articles or something different. Well, what are the headlines? April 20th, 211 in a newspaper called DNA, it's a daily paper. Why celebrities are turning to Buddhism. More and more TV stars are turning to Buddhism to deal with the increasing stress levels that comes with their profession. Blame it on the high stress levels associated with the TV industry or simply matters of faith. I mean, surely you should know whether it's a matter of faith or stress. I met this lady, won't mention her, but she's here with a photograph. Tiska Chopra, this was 2011. And I discussed with her Buddhism. She had been a newly hatched member of the Soka Gakkai at that time. And so on. Somebody says Buddhism is a way of life. Instead of blaming karma or situations of other people, it has taught me to take the responsibility of my own actions. Sorry, that's what karma is about. The next headline, April 11, 2018. This is from The Atlantic in the USA, but written by an Indian author. And many of the Ambedkarite Buddhists find better outlets outside India than in our mainstream papers. The title is Converting to Buddhism as a Form of Political Protest. So these 20 million Buddhists are often dismissed as just a political movement. It's all politics. It's all a vote bank. I'm not denying it is in some cases. There are organizations which are front for political parties of the Ambedkarite flavor. But there are also many, many dharma organizations which function genuinely. May 2018, again DNA, headline, PM Narendra Modi talks of Buddhism as part of his outreach. October 14th, 2016, in a website called countercurrents.org, why mainstream media continues to boycott Buddhist Dalits stroke events and gatherings. Now, this one is directly related to our topic. Why does mainstream media ignore? And this is written by a Dalit, a neo-Buddhist, in a mainstream paper, in a mainstream website rather. Let me just get it up. This will take about 2 minutes to read. Why mainstream media continues to boycott Buddhist Dalits events and gatherings. I'm taking select paragraphs to cut the long story short. It's a rather long article. And also to give some background to people who are from abroad. Every year, millions of Buddhists and Dalits converge to Nagpur from across India to celebrate the anniversary of conversion of Dr. Ambedkar, known as the Dhammachakra Parivartan. They come in lakhs, that is hundreds of thousands, to pay their tribute to celebrate the historic day of Ashoka Vijaya Dashmi in Nagpur, when the Dhammachakra Parivartan Day celebrations overshadow the Dasera celebration, which is a Hindu festival predominantly, in the RSS headquarters just miles away. Everywhere you see Dhammachakra, the Buddha, and Dr. Ambedkar, their literature, music, culture, theater, dance, and reverence. Everything here to understand what makes Dr. Ambedkar the tallest intellect of India. The people come on their own, and their emotions and passion can only be understood if you have sensitivity. You would imagine all this positive news would make excellent sound bites for the mainstream media, isn't it? But not to be. Just like just like every year, the mainstream media continues to boycott such historical and mammoth gatherings. You will never see in you will never, it's very small type. You will never see in mainstream media, print or electronic, Hindi or English, giving decent coverage to this grand event attended by millions. Just few kilometers away from Diksha Bhumi, that's the ground where this Diksha or initiation was done, the RSS does its annual Dasara festival, which is aired live on many channels or covered extensively. Somehow, Diksha Bhumi gets censored every time. While Nagpur has Diksha Bhumi, Mumbai has Chaitya Bhumi, the place where Dr. Ambedkar was cremated on 6 December 1956. He converted in 1956, about 6 weeks before his death. Millions of Dalits gather here to pay their homage. And yet, there is never a media coverage. If anything, this event is reported in the news form of traffic congestion and pollution or inconvenience to the residents living in the society. And we see this year after year. I come from Bombay. In fact, on one of this December 6th events at this Chaitya Bhumi pilgrimage, with people come from all around the country, at one of the biggest art galleries, the most celebrated one, Jahangir Art Gallery in Bombay, there was an exhibition of paintings by an artist, paintings of the Buddha and the Buddha's life. And on the streets, you had hundreds of these pilgrims carrying their little bundles of food and spare clothes on a stick, their children in tow. And as they passed by this gallery, and outside there was a poster with the Buddha right there, they wanted to go in and see the paintings. And I also went in to see the paintings. I walked in freely, as I always do. The person, the security guy, at the entrance to that gallery, not to the other, there are 3, 4 art galleries there within this complex. Stop these guys. And I said, why are you stopping them? Do you know who they are? They are Buddhists. and you have an exhibition on the paintings on the Buddha's life. They said, no, 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 they're very dirty people. They don't know anything. They will touch the paintings and spoil the paintings. I then went and met some Buddhist leader, maybe a political type, who came and created a little bit of a ruckus. And then I went next day to check, and they were being allowed inside. Now, I'm not saying that this story is 100% true or this is the situation. I'm not saying that. But it is certainly the perception of this mass of Buddhists that they use the word censored. In the earlier session, I had raised a question and I had asked something about the quality of courage. Mindfulness will help in every situation. That we all know, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a student, whether you're a teacher. But since we are not yet as enlightened and as omniscient as the Buddha, if we want to discover through observation, through data collection, reality of any situation, I'm not even talking of ultimate reality, I'm talking of conventional reality. We need to have dialogue with each other, especially as journalists and journalists with the community. And this dialogue has to be sincere and heartfelt. And do you know what is the one thing that is the biggest obstacle to dialogue? One of the biggest obstacles to dialogue. It is self-censorship and censorship. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to be moderating a film, a group, a panel on films, Buddhist films, and we can talk more about censorship then. But I again am raising the point that we should not use mindfulness. We should understand the meaning and practice of mindfulness, and it should not be just a word which we use to self-censor ourselves or use it as a club to silence other people. Say, hey, be mindful. Don't offend me. Don't offend this community. Don't say that. Be with the government. There are governments who would lap it up. I mean, they would love this more than a cat-like scream. They will just lap it up and say, yes, yes, be mindful. Be mindful. Praise us. We are doing the right thing. Thank you. Mistry.
Now I invite Professor Kamolrat, Intaratat, President, Center for Communication Development and Knowledge Management, Thailand.
สวัสดีค่ะ Good afternoon. I have the yes. Okay. So it's very honored for me to be invited to join this forum because I'm very new in this kind of issue of Buddhism communication, mindful communication. But some of my work has been relevant to this kind of topic. So I come to learn and I come to share. And let's see how can we make it happen. Coming from the People University of Thailand. So we work for the marginal poor in Thailand. Thailand is about the 70%, I think, that being marginalized. So this university is working for them, and I have set up this expertise research center that using ICT to empowering people. So this is how we use ICT to empowering the marginalized people over Thailand and even in some of the ASEAN country. Why have to be ICT? We have worked with a lot of the ICT company like Google Statistics saying that we live online now. We are not going online, but we are now online. So meaning that in these coming years, with the population of the globe, that will be the 8 billion. In these coming years, it will be all digital citizen globally. So meaning that everyone have to be linked, have to use ICT for the sake of that. So my duty as the university, we have to frame, we have to facilitate all the ICT uses in the way it should be. So we integrate kind of national development with the SDG, kind of that to make the frame to lead the ICT for people empowerment. So we link this kind of. So ICT for all is the mission that my research center have run under the SDG development goal. So once we have trained, I'm the co-founder of the telecenter in Thailand for the last decade. And then we try to top down the ICT training for the marginalized people, and then found out that mostly fail because ICT is ICT. ICT is another world of them. So once we listen to them, and hey, if you use ICT, you will earn more. If you use ICT, money will come to you. And then second is, if you use ICT, any welfare that is fundamental for your family, that will come to you. And then the last one is, if you use ICT, you are ICT literate, you will be the voicer. Your voices will be heard. This kind of thing, and then it proved for about a decade that once we design any ICT for the marginalized, we have to answer this kind of principle, because they want money, they want dignity, and then they want any kind of fundamental welfare. So this kind of thing. So this kind of ICT development framework has been integrated and topping up from what they want, what is the real demand of them. And then along the way, as the academia and development, we also have to see the phenomenon of the media. From the Google statistic last year, they're saying that Thailand is a top in using YouTube. Thailand people is enjoy in watching, talking, entertaining, but not much reading. So that's why the Thailand last year is a top in using the YouTube media. So it's kind of, so we have everyone since they're young, the primary student, the junior student, they use YouTube to produce their own lesson learn. They create their own singing band. They create anything. They create by their own. So this is the real phenomenon. And then many of the small farmer in Thailand, they used to be top down, but right now many of them transform themselves to be the smart farmer by using the YouTube channel, YouTube kind of that. So my duty, my research center is to create the massive open course online to train them. Many of them transform themselves to be the general entrepreneur, food seller, vendor, to be the smart food designer. The pad thai, the fried noodle rice from the $1 jumping to be $3 kind of. So the massive open course online has keep training them to be more and more the value. And then even like now they are very crazy to be a nurse, to be the nurse helper, to be the caregiver for the senior citizen society kind of that. It seemed to be good. Besides from that, the social media is also very popular among the Thai people. Everyone use social media. Today, I cannot access to the internet. It's really bad for me. Because Thai people is quite addicted to the internet. I have that. So once they got trained, these girls are the marginal girls in the remote country of Thailand. Once they got trained about the media, ICT, they are really exactly the voicer. They can voice their local wisdom. They can voice their dignity, any kinds of that. And then it should be good. It sounds to be good. More money to them. But the real phenomenon is more social problem, more fighting, more misunderstanding, more chaos in the society. So as we are one among the trainer in ICT for the marginalized, that is a majority of the Thai people, we sit together. What happening up? Like Professor said, what exactly Buddhism? What is a Buddhist? What is the framework of Buddhist? Kind of that. So we sit and think that, hey, we might need to get back to our common root of our society, Buddhism society, kind of that. So we talk that, okay, we are expert in ICT. we will use ICT to make it happen again. We are success in utilizing simplified ICT to make the analog entrepreneur to be the smart entrepreneur. But for this time, let's see how can we do the smart Buddhism in Thailand. So we start the the phenomenon that make the society quite the chaos in the current of Thai society now is actually in our society we have only 7 channels, the big media broadcasting channel in Thailand. But in the last few years back, by the revolution of the digital broadcasting, we got about 40 channels. So meaning that everyone have to produce their media to feed their own broadcasting channel, and also everyone realize that we need to help the society to solve some solution, kind of that. Everyone jump and come to produce kind of the Buddhism programming, kind of that. But nobody tell them that your content is proper or not, your content is correct or not. That's kind of everyone enjoy. Everyone, I'm willing to help the society. I produce the Buddhism program, kind of that. Even in the printed media, newspaper, a lot of news, relevant dialect or indirect about Buddhism coming up every day. But the situation should be good, right? But reality is it worse, kind of that. So this is a real situation. It's create more and more chaos. What exactly the real Buddhism? So this is the answer. The Buddhism content seem to be more block and blur, kind of that, kind of. And then some others believe some other the secret or spiritual coming up instead. People talk on the base of common sense instead of the reason, the real of Buddhism principle, kind of that. So, and many of the new generation, they even don't know what exactly the fundamental principle of Buddhism that is basic for their daily life, kind of that. So, and then even the concentration, the wisdom, the mindfulness, and kind of that, this is very blur in the society, because other in Thailand we have no Buddhism station television program. Just only one station, just only one station program that they pronounce to be they claim themselves to be the Buddhism station. But the content of Buddhism that is transferred by that station is not correct, is not accepted, kind of that. That's abuse of the society. Buddhism and money is kind of mixed up, this kind of. So this is the reason why our organization start to go and work with the Buddhism group. They are the stakeholder, that they are the Buddhism study foundation that lead by the monk, Buddhism monk. And then we talk about hey, how can we just pilot and show the prototype, how can we clarify the society about the Buddhism content. And then we make the website and try to start up by doing the Buddhism content analysis. And then we redesign, and then we transform many of the analog content into the digital content. We create the ebook in many of the fundamental principle of Buddhism, kind of that. And then we also try to pick up some of the particular fundamental that is fast track, and then make it touching, and then make it like the precise content design to fit with the marginalized people, kind of that. This kind of e-display, and then whenever of the Buddhism event, we also display even in the website e-exhibition and also the physical exhibition, kind of that. And the most important is we also seeking kind of the media. The most media is the YouTube program. We are the center of knowledge management for development. So the duty right now that we just try to do the knowledge management about Buddhism and put it in the right channel, put it in the YouTube channel, in the ebook, and also the marginalized people right now, many of them, especially the senior citizen, they use the podcasting, they use the radio to access to the Buddhism content, kind of that. So this is the how that we work. And then who is the most happy from this kind of situation? The monk themselves, because in Thailand we have a lot of temple and monk, and many of the monk they cannot access to the correct content of Buddhism, kind of that. So we try to produce the basic of the massive open course online about the fundamental of Buddhism, and then try to let the monk to do the study, because we work with the Tele Center in Thailand, and then we link this kind of thing together. And then for my personal working in using ICT to educate, to empowering the marginalized people, I think I'm sure that the mindful communication is really a must. But how can we decide and put it in a more value to empowering our people? This is my point. Thank you so much.
Touched on how IT is used to promote Buddhism in Thailand. So let me invite Mr. Toung Synuanchanh, media scholar, Laos.
Hi, everybody. First of all, allow me to thanks for the invitation and hospitality. And I feel that many of you may feel exhausted because this is the last uh, sessions. So, but please wait. We only have two left. I will take you very brief into the how Buddhists uh, are reported on the media in Laos. So before taking into that, I would like to uh, clarify 3 points. So the first is that 60% of the Lao population claim themselves as a Buddhist. So, but that's not really sure that because another 20 or to 30% they are believe in animism. So it's kind of mixed. So the Buddhists make up to 80% of the populations. The second point is that we have the law on the media. So that was announced on in 2008. So the law said that the media is the voice of the party and the society for disseminating and translating the directives, policy, strategy of the party and the government in order to create the mutual understanding and public knowledge. The third is the political discourse that has very powerful in Laos that we say peace, solidarity and harmony. This is why I mentioned these three, because it shaped how the media report or the Buddhist appears on the media. So when we look at the article or news about the Buddhism in the Lao media, especially on the printed media, so we will see that it is communicated through the cultural practices. For example, the festival, when they have this festival, when you driving a car or when you visit to Laos, you're gonna see like a banners that inviting to you to the temple to do to participate the ceremony and do some practice meditation that is common in Laos. So when the news, when the media report about the Buddhism, so it's gonna, so it come as the cultural practices, and then the religions, the Buddhism and the politics also relevant. It is, you can see normally in the newspaper, in the TV, when the media report about the Buddhism, so they're gonna capture the political leaders or the country leaders there because they always appears in the event. So what I try to um, focus here is that the Lao government also put an importance on the Buddhism, because Buddhism have also the history from the, also involved in the Lao revolution history. So they contribute a lot to the development of the country. So, but when we also do have the TV channels as well. So when the monk, they have the program to deliver the Dharma. So in the morning, so when you wake up in the morning, if you turn on the TV, you're gonna see the monk come and teach you the Dharma and how you can practice in daily life. And also they have the radio program as well that teach Dharma as well. So here is this TV program have also in the also public and the private channel as well. However, but we cannot see that much about how the media reported about those Buddhist monks that they work in the grassroots. For example, they visited the school and to teach the student about the morality, how you like a social life skill, this thing that when they report it, it's just very simple and no more. So, but what we need is that we need more um, deepened about what is the value of the teachings. So that is we need more in Laos, and also the Buddhism and Buddhist organization also has also use the social medias as a power, because when they cannot appears very much on the uh, official media, so they turn to use the social media like a Facebook, where they form their own um, page to promote their role, to promote their activity. For example, when they have the summer ordination camp for the small children, so they use that platform to report uh, their activity and the values of the events for the society, for the children in terms of education. So when talking about the in Laos, because many people may understand that Laos is a communist country, many people understand that it's a socialist. It's up to you. And but the question is, people asking that what about the freedoms of the press and freedom of an expressions of the media and the peoples. So this morning I discussed with Mr. People, and where he mentioned about the disaster relief in Laos, where the flood in the southern. We have a lot of the issue about the media roles, and the government was excused of they restrict the freedom of the press. But he gave me a very interesting and very good idea that how he cooperate with the government or with the people in the local. In terms of he will enter the site in the name of reporter or journalist, but he changed it to the coordinator. So whenever he go and find the victims, he will coordinate for the help. So this is kind of thing that we can use the empowerment when the time of disaster and reliefs. So because of many fake news happen at the time. So I gotta leave with some note that when we talk about the freedom of the press or expressions, what if we have if we give more and more freedom of the press or expressions, but we have more conflict, we have more social issues or violence. But what if we have middle path, freedom of the press or expression, but we have more um, non-violence, peaceful society? I think that the Buddhist value of mindfulness, morality, and uh, samutta patipata, I think patita samutpa, that's independence, had an answer for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As time is running out, I invite Ms.
Yeah.
Nayheak
Yeah.
Khun, journalist Cambodia.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, all distinguished here. I'm one of the journalists from Cambodia. I'm very glad to join this section because I can see that two ladies came to the stage. In the morning, we don't have the lady to join until to this session. So I can say that it's a very special session at the end of the day. Okay, and thank you for the professor from Thai that she's very give a clear introduction and mention about the ICT education and also including the fundamental Buddhism, including also the example that her country haven't yet have a TV channel coverage on the Buddhism issue. I think that Cambodia is not different from her country because right now in Cambodia we haven't yet set up the TV channel that cover on the Buddhism issue. However, from my perspective of one of journalists from Cambodia, I can see that we have one radio program talking about peace and conflict, which is invite Buddhists and monks come to speak and educate, and also allow the people call and talk, have a chance to discuss about their real issue and situation. So I think that is the first starting point that Cambodia is start develop in terms of the Buddhism in the media. And last but not least, my country is one of the country among the Asian countries is ready to join from the other country, Thai, Laos, and also India to create some sort of the program to promote the Buddhist in the media. And since I'm the speaker of this day, so I want to let the audience to have a question rather than speak much because we so tired and exhausted in the morning until to now. So open the floor for the discussion question. Yes, thank you.
If you have any question, you can raise. Uh,
Thank you. I live in Hong Kong, and can you hear me? Hello. Yes. I've been wanting to add a few words since this morning, but it was very busy. I realized that the mindfulness, the thing. In my daily life, I write about technology. So there's a new technology called blockchain these days. So I go to all these conferences, and it's very interesting. Everybody thinks they know what is blockchain, but everyone has their own sort of idea about what it is. So there's no like a consensus. There's no sort of clear definition. So I think mindfulness is also something like that. Everybody has their own idea about mindfulness. So listening to the discussions this morning, I think I just realized that actually I'm not quite sure when you say Buddhist media. I think there's a one area I think you're talking about is the Buddhist religious media. You know, they're covering the Buddhism, which is more like a community journalism. You know, so because of course a lot of these countries are Buddhist countries, and usually a lot of the news are not really reported in the international media. So I think that's more like a religious media. Because I studied in journalism in the United States. I did a master's degree and I actually wrote a thesis, MA thesis on Buddhist magazine in the United States. And then the second, I think, area is we also actually the topic of the conference is the mindful communication for conflict avoid. That's actually a more general idea, you know, trying to sort of like more like a making journalists more conscientious, you know, more mindful. That's all journalists, you know. So that's like a bigger ideal, broader sort of ambition. Because since these days, sort of not just everybody is a journalist now, you know. Everybody is posting on Twitter, on Facebook. So that's like a sort of broader ambition. So I think there are lots of. I think it's a good discussion. I think there's a lots of issues we can really talk about. You know, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just I want to bring up two examples. One is from Cambodia. About 3 or 4 years ago, I visited a temple in Siem Reap, where a young monk, Cambodian monk with MBA from Harvard, he has turned this temple, I think it's called Wat Damanok, into a development center, basically. I was quite impressed. I did a story on him. And then as a result of the conversation I had with him, I drafted a proposal. He wanted to do a community radio station. And I discussed with him about the Catholic Church run community radio in the Philippines I have visited, which was funded by UNESCO through a project called Tambuli. They funded the Tambuli Community Radio Project, and some of those stations were run by Catholic churches in the villages. And I was very impressed by it. In fact, I did a report assessment for UNESCO, and I actually praised those radio stations for being development radio. So I took the same model and did a proposal for UNESCO to set up what I think would have been the first Buddhist development radio run by a temple in Cambodia. So I put the proposal together, exactly the same Tambuli proposal from Philippines, which was funded by UNESCO, and some of the Catholic churches run the radio. In this case, the only difference is Catholic is replaced by Buddhist development radio. The Bangkok office, the regional coordinator, regional communication advisor in Bangkok, was a Spanish woman, liked the idea. She endorsed it for funding, to send for funding to UNESCO, but she had to get the UNESCO office in Phnom Penh to endorse it. And they said if the monk can get a license, because monk said he will get a license from the government. They have advised the Bangkok office, if the monk can get a license, it will be a mouthpiece for Hun Sen, Hun Sen's government. So the Bangkok office could not forward it for funding to Paris. So that was the end of that project. Then in Thailand, in 2014, I was at the World Federation for Buddhist Conference, and I met this Thai lady from Young Buddhist Association of Thailand. And we had a long discussion about why they find difficulty in attracting young Thais to their activities. So I proposed a community radio project because community radio is quite widespread in Thailand. And so I proposed a community radio project that they set up a community radio project, and I said I will help them with designing the curriculum to train them in community radio. But the thing is, she was interested in the idea, but it never came about because the people at the top, at the Young Buddhist Association of Thailand, did not think community radio will be able to attract young people, because what I suggested was train them in making radio programs, and then you bring Buddhist contents into it. So by making radio programs, setting up a small community radio there, they will learn Buddhism through producing radio. And I think what you talked about is something similar what you're doing in Thailand.
My query is to Professor Kamolrat. I was going through your presentation and those slides there, and two happy monks I could see. I am curious to know because about a week or 10 days back, I read in the newspapers, in the media, that the monks are little bit worried because of their health, because the alms being given by the public are too little bit making them obese, and the government of Thailand is little bit worried about the health of the Buddhist monks there. What is the truth?
Your question is about the health of the Buddhist monks, right? Yeah, okay. So my wife is a nutritionist, so therefore I knew, okay, because I shared that article with my wife, and she contacted her Thai friend who is also nutritionist in Thammasat University, I think, or Mahido, I forgot already. And apparently, what they do now is that because you know the Thai ropes is very loose. It's very loose, and you walk and you cannot feel the rope on your body, right? So if you're fat, you don't feel it. You keep on eating and eating, and you walk and walk and walk, and you don't feel your fat. You see. So what happened is that they're trying to tighten up the ropes. They make it a standard. They're asking the government to kind of come up, tighten up the ropes. If you eat a certain amount of food, and you your fat touches the rope, you stop eating. Okay. Another thing is that oil, because Thai food is quite oily. And another thing, two things, a bit oily. Second one is sugar. And the incidence of diabetes in the monks are quite high. All right. And the problem is there are two types of monks in Thailand. One is the city monks. They don't exercise a lot. The forest monks, because they go on alms giving, okay? So they walk the whole town to collect the food in the morning and before noon. But the city monks, people come and offer nice, great food in the temples, very tasty. Never exercise. They have a big problem. Okay, so the government actually is looking at it very seriously, and of course, I think it's a very ingenious method, to tighten the ropes a bit. So they are actually asking the people to cut down two things: oil and sugar. All right. So thank you very much. They're doing something about it. Thailand, very serious issue. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just mention something? I think the article, funny as it is. Sorry, I'm Kim. I'm from Singapore. I think the article, funny as it is, actually is a learning opportunity for all of us, because when we make offerings to the monk, do we think, what are we offering? Do we think through, and I mean, it's very different from Buddha's time when people are all poor, we offer whatever we have. Nowadays, just because we have a little bit of money in our pocket, we just dump things on the monk and expecting merits instead of thinking through, am I giving too much? Am I giving healthy food? Am I giving vegetarian food, or maybe whatever? So I think this is actually, it could have been expanded into a learning opportunity for the community to actually understand what are they doing when they are making offerings to the Sangha. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Sri Lanka is no exception. Most of monks have been diagnosed with diabetes in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, can I just make one comment, and maybe it's a question to Aspi Mistry. When there's very low reportage of what we're calling the neo-Buddhists, I think it could also be because they're not the reading public of the newspapers or of the media. So what happens is that the newspaper owners or editors, and this is a question to them, will only cover things which are relevant to their readership. Otherwise, other news, unless it's very sensational. So I think part of the reason is because the readership is not that community of the Dalit Buddhists, because they're relatively poor and maybe not reading those papers and media. Is that correct?
I am not sure, because first of all, I was talking about television also. Now, everybody, every slum, hutment in a slum, everybody has dish television. And there are at least 200 channels in local languages. And they also do not. For instance, Maharashtra, which has the highest number of Buddhists in percentage terms from the converted Buddhists, has Marathi channels. But even the Marathi channels cover Diksha Bhumi. That's all in that article in detail. But I've also had personal experience going to Nagpur. They do not cover it. They will cover it for a minute or two if the chief minister goes there or does something or inaugurates something. The other thing is, if you look at the level of education and literacy, it is a fact. I mean, you can check it. The highest percentage of education level and literacy is in, when you look at Dalits as a whole, scheduled caste. There may be Hindus, there may be any other religion, and the Buddhists. When you compare these two, the education levels and the literacy levels of the converted Buddhists is much, much higher. So literacy is much more. Moreover, we are talking of mainstream media. Now, for instance, in Maharashtra, there is a Marathi newspaper. I think it's a daily. I forget the name, but the title of the name of the newspaper, but it's a dedicated Buddhist Marathi newspaper, which covers Buddhist events, which brings news about international Buddhist events, and so on. So it's not that they are not reading, it's not that they don't have television. I mean, in some editor's mind, this could be an argument, Some editor or some reporter might argue this way, the way you suggest, that, oh, but this is not my audience. But then sometimes I think they also they themselves define the audience.
SP, I think of all the communities that you have really mentioned about the Buddhism, I don't know whether you mentioned about the Shakyas, because that's another very large group, and they consider that it's like a cultural resurgence for them, and they are spread at least in UP, Bihar, and not only in India, but now they have a very strong alliance with the Shakyas of Nepal also. They keep on organizing. So
I actually included them in the 98% of neo-Buddhists as being Buddhist converts from various lower castes. Now, they are more OBC, I think, rather than scheduled castes.
yeah, but they are not really the Ambedkarites. That also we have to
No,
make
that is, if you want to go into detail, they have a certain viewpoint about this. They hold Dr. Ambedkar in great respect. They say he was a statesman. They say we are in this position because of him. I'm talking of the North Indian, the Shakya and that clan. However, they say that we would like to keep Buddhism and Ambedkar politics, of Ambedkar's philosophy and economics separate. So the example the leader of that organization gave me was that, you see, when there is, for instance, Vaisak celebrations, Buddha Purnima, then we will have a big function. We will have Buddha image there. We will offer lights, candles, flowers, everything, but we won't have Ambedkar's photo there. However, if it is Ambedkar's birth anniversary, death anniversary, anything like that, then we would have a function. We would put Ambedkar's life-size cutout or something like that And there would be songs and revolutionary songs, and people would make speeches and reflect on his contribution to their present status. But he said, there we will not necessarily bring in Buddhism. Now, in Maharashtra, the other groups that we know of, this has sort of conflated quite a bit. So they refer to Dr. Ambedkar as Bodhisattva Ambedkar. They will always have an image of him next to the Buddha statue in a Buddha Vihara, and so on. So this is more artistic. And also there is a slight other approach which was discussed in Deer Park when we had recently an Indian Buddhist retreat where both groups had come, and there was a lot of argument and discussion also. And that is that the feeling of the Shakyas, who seem to be more secular, more sort of inclusive of many other castes and religions, they say that these guys, that is the Ambedkarites, are all the time talking about bringing Buddhism to their caste, to this particular scheduled caste grouping. He says, supposing we convert every Dalit into Buddhism, then what? What's the next step? Is that all? Do you want to just confine Buddhism as one more caste mark for that particular ex caste? He says, on the other hand, we feel that Buddhism is for everyone. It's a totally universal thing. So we want to, when we talk about spreading the ideas and values of Buddhism, we want to spread it to all communities. So he says, when we do a Buddha anniversary function or anything like that, then even the Muslim in the village comes and puts flowers before the Buddha image. He also respects that image. And he says, that is what we want. We don't want us as lower caste to constantly be attacking and cursing and blaming the upper caste. Because we have to, if we really think we are Buddhists and everyone has Buddha nature, then we have to include them in our drive to spread Buddhist ideas. And he said, you can't do that if you're all the time abusing someone because of his caste and because of some 2000-year-old history. So this is a very sort of, I mean, it's an interesting debate. And that's the thing. But I was including them in the neo-Buddhists.
But only this thing is that socially they are different.
Socially they're different because again the caste is different, no?
Yeah, because the Shakyas are not scheduled caste.
They're not. They're
the scheduled
more,
caste are.
That's
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question to Nayheak. Now, I notice Cambodians have a very strong identity as Buddhists. Now, what role does media play in that, giving that identity?
Yeah, so far in Cambodia right now, we don't have a media channel focused on the Buddhism issue. But as I have been talking with my colleague as a journalist, they said that why don't they cover a little bit strong on the Buddhism issue? They said that because we are respectful and we follow all the agenda of the that our country that they are set up on the Buddhism for the people they are following. So everyone already know that we have to like follow that occasionally that have the event in the public. So we don't have much on the issue on that for media to cover.
And also the palace, which is it that is given a lot of coverage in the media so that the people feel that you're living in a Buddhist country with a Buddhist identity.
Regarding to the issue related to the palace, I think that journalists much more afraid of to cover on that issue because it's related to the king, and also I don't think that the editor will let them publish that article. Yeah, but for the because of the Buddhism is too strong in Cambodia, so even the journalists want to cover that issue, they have to thinking about the respectfulness of the monk and the Buddhist. So it might be conflict in the public after they publish that issue, the article that they wrote it. Yeah, that's why we don't have much more on that issue that we are cover. Even in the radio that they are invite the monk to give a speak, we are not talking about the politics or the issue that related to the king or monk, but we talking about mindfulness, peaceful or conflict, something like that.
Now time has come to wind up session. I thank my colleagues for your contribution and those who raised question over their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.